Hey everybody, I'm Kara, and this is going to be my monthly reads video for July 2021. I have a bunch of books to get to, so I'm going to get started. First off, at the beginning of the month, on the first day of July, I finished reading Ramona by Helen Hunt Jackson. This is my copy of it. So this is an older book. So it's about a woman named Ramona. In the 1800s, she's being raised on a ranch in California as an adopted child, but she winds up falling in love with a Native American man named Alessandro, and Ramona herself is partly Native American. Her mother was Native American, and the story ends up being this journey that Ramona and Alessandro go on together. And the book touches on some of the things that were happening to Native Americans at the time, how they were being pushed more and more off their lands. And it was sad. There are things in this book that happened that were sad, but it is a really good story. And if you want to read a good piece of historical fiction, this would be worth reading. And next, I have a series I started to reread the beginning of July. I wasn't planning to start these so soon, but once I started, I just got hooked on it. So this is The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King. It's the first book in the Mary Russell series. So it starts in 1915. Mary Russell is 15 years old. She's just recently lost her parents and her brother in a terrible car crash, and she's gone to live with her aunt in Sussex, in England. And while there, she meets Sherlock Holmes, who happens to also live in the Sussex. He moved to the Sussex Downs after retiring from detective work. So, Mary Russell is sort of like a female Sherlock Holmes. Like, if you've ever wondered, what if Sherlock Holmes was a woman, she would probably be something like Mary Russell. So the two of them she becomes his apprentice, really. So the book does, jump forward a few years to when Mary is 18 and 19, and it goes through a couple of cases that she goes on with Holmes. So it is really good. I read it pretty quickly. So then I read the second book, A Monstrous Regiment of Women. So this one takes place in 1921, a couple of years after The Beekeeper's Apprentice ended. Mary has been studying at Oxford, and she's also coming into her inheritance. She turns 21 in this book. And this was another really good mystery, and her relationship with Holmes changes in a big way in this book, which I'll try not to say in case you decide you want to read them. So then there was the third and fourth books. A Letter of Mary, which picks up a couple of years. This takes place in 1923, 2 years after A Monstrous Regiment of Women. And this was also a really good mystery. And then there's the fourth book, The Moor, which is a few months after A Letter of Mary, and Holmes and Russell end up solving a mystery on Dartmoor, which is where the Hound of the Baskervilles took place, which is probably the most famous of the Sherlock Holmes stories Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote. I think it's the most famous, too. So then, the fifth book is O Jerusalem. This one, we jump back a few years. So in the first book, The Beekeeper's Apprentice, there is a period where Holmes and Russell go to Jerusalem for a little while. But it kind of skims, the book kind of skimmed over what exactly happened while they were there. It doesn't really say. So this book, yeah, at the close of the year 1918, this is what happened. They wound up being involved in a mystery while in Jerusalem. And I think I didn't understand at first why this book was in the series, but then it did have a connection to the sixth book, Justice Hall, which starts right after Holmes and Russell get home back to Sussex after everything that happened in the Moor. And this book has a connection to O Jerusalem. The characters is the connection. And I think I understand why the author decided to tell O Jerusalem first and then go to this one. So I didn't like O Jerusalem and Justice Hall as much as the first four books, but they were still really good. So then I started reading. I also read The Black Moon, which is book 5 in the Poldark series by Winston Graham. I found out there's a foreword included which was written by Winston Graham himself. There was a big gap in between when the fourth book, Warlegging, was published and when this one was published. Apparently, Winston Graham decided to step away from the books for a little while and work on other things. He just wasn't as interested in it anymore, but then he decided apparently that he wanted to know what happened next. And I personally am glad he did, because this was a pretty good addition to the series. We met a few new characters in this book that we hadn't met before. There's new stories. A lot of this book has to do with quite a bit of this book has to do with this new romance between Drake Carn, one of Demelza's brothers, her youngest brother, and Morwenna Chenoweth, who is a cousin of Elizabeth's. I think this might be Elizabeth, but on the Masterpiece show, but I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know. And I thought this book was pretty good. It was some new storyline, we met new characters, and some of that kind of continues in the Four Swans. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, a storyline with Dwight and Caroline kind of gets resolved in these two books. So now this one is called The Four Swans because it has to do with some difficulties with the women in Ross Poldark's life. His wife Demelza, Elizabeth, Caroline, and Morwenna, who are all kind of big parts of his life now. So there's things in this story that, things that affect Ross and Demelza's marriage, something that affects Elizabeth and George's marriage. Dwight and Caroline are starting out their marriage, and, Morwenna is having a very rough time in her own marriage. We meet, a couple of new characters. We met Hugh Armitage, who was, very infatuated with Demelza. We met Morwenna's younger sister, Rowena. And there's also a story for Sam Carn, the other brother of Demelza, who we met in The Black Moon. So, yeah, I think so. There's 12 books, so I've finished the first half of the series, and I gotta say, it's pretty good so far. I'm looking forward to the second half of the series. So the last one I have to discuss is one that I randomly decided to reread, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So I read Wuthering Heights for the first time back last winter, and I sort of just randomly decided to reread it a few weeks ago. I kind of have some mixed feelings about the book, because it is a pretty well-written story. It is a good story, and I understand why it's a classic. It's just I found most of the characters to be very unlikable. Like, there wasn't really anybody in this book I genuinely liked. but it's a good story. It's a well-written story. It's not going to be one of my favorite classics, but I think it is good, and it's definitely worth reading. So that was it for July. So I'm currently reading The Game, which is the seventh Mary Russell book. And today I started reading the first few chapters of another book called Crave by Tracy Wolff that I think is pretty popular right now. So those are probably going to be in my August monthly reads. And I'm not sure yet what else, but we'll see. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.